The direction of all pressures is spiral. All direction is therefore curved. All curves are spiral. All orbits are spiral. They are all conic sections. A parabolic or hyperbolic orbit is impossible in this universe of pressures. Any anti-clockwise orbit, which cuts the base of its cone of measured energy, is regenerated in the opposite cone of the wave, and its orbit becomes a clockwise orbit of another system. An object freely moving in space must move in a curved spiral line, whether that object be a planet, a corpuscle, a ray of light, or any other expression of energy. Further still, any expression of energy in this universe must end where it began. It must be curved. Furthermore, the curve is never a circle. It is spiral, and its convolutions from its beginning to its ending run the whole gamut of the effects of motion in speeds, temperature, planes, and pressures. Furthermore, no curved spiral of motion ending where it began traverses the universe in its journey. The conclusion of Einstein that the universe must be spherical because all direction is curved is based on the assumption that the direction of motion is curved, circular, or elliptical, and traverses the whole universe in its passage. No mass or body or other expression of motion in any state can pass the boundary plane of its own wave of energy. Every effort of energy sets its own dimensions. Its boundaries are limited by that effort. Energy reproduces itself and thus transfers its expression throughout the universe from wave to wave, but there are dividing walls where motion ceases and begins again, and where all mass disappears to reform again. Mass is energy. Energy accumulates as mass and is redistributed in accordance with the increasing and decreasing pressures which it is able to generate. A corpuscle is a mass just as a planet is a mass. An atom is a mass just as a solar system is a mass. The pressure which an atom of hydrogen can develop varies vastly from that which an atom of radium can develop. They compare with one another as a sewing machine motor compares with a high-voltage power plant. All masses, whether they are light units, planets, or suns, are compression and expansion pumps, which hold themselves together for a time in greater or less proximity according to the various ratios of their respective compression and expansion powers, in order to simulate the forms being thought out as ideal by the image-making faculty of the one universal mind. It is a fundamental principle of physics that the slightest change in pressure of any substance changes its volume. A change of temperature is one indicator of a change of pressure. Every inch of the universe varies in temperature. Every inch must therefore vary in pressure. Every atom varies in pressure from its exterior to its nucleus. If its temperature is changed, its volume also changes. Also, every kind of atom varies from every other kind in volume, temperature, and all other dimensions. Every kind of atom is in a different plane, and each plane is the pressure wall of one of the varying pressure compartments which divides this universe of motion into pressure zones. Space is made up of atoms of these varying pressures. If an object cannot freely move at the Earth's surface without expanding or contracting to adjust itself to the varying pressures, how can it do so in space? The answer comes back from tradition. But space is a void, is it? It is densely packed with atoms of the high octaves which we cannot see, but which are not beyond the power of our instruments to detect, even if our thinking cannot reveal them to us. In later volumes, the spectroscopic proof of a space of motion will be given. For the purpose of this volume, let us consider this subject in reference to masses which we can see. We, simple dwellers on this planet, are prone to err in our conclusions because of the relative importance of our planetary position to our point of view. A hummingbird flying across our sky is vastly larger than the largest star, and one that is apparently bigger than the sun or moon. No wonder that Copernicus made the earth the center of the system upon which all else turned. Surely the little village of Kipling's story could be forgiven for voting the world flat, as all men once believed. Quite a reasonable human error it was, for one could see it with one's own eyes. There was no illusion about it. It was the most real thing that they knew, a solid thing flat and motionless around which the sky turned. For attempting to correct this error, Galileo narrowly escaped with his life, and his statements were almost universally denied. We still measure the orbits of all the planets of this system by our own little Earth's ecliptic instead of by the solar equatorial plane. This may be necessary for local convenience, just as it is convenient for the village to measure distances to nearby villages and towns from itself. If, however, the geographer or historian mapped the planet or wrote its history around the little village of his residence as a radial center of comparison, he would, to say the least, be colossally egotistic. The effects of motion of this solar system described herein are based upon the sun as its center and not upon the earth. The planet's orbits and all precessional motions will also be charted in relation to the solar equatorial plane. All assumed facts of pressure, density, temperature, and the relative power of the attraction of gravitation of this entire solar system are now measured from conditions obtained in this little pea-like village of our solar system, without any attempt to translate them into the relative ratios due to relative conditions. If a premise is wrong, a conclusion must be wrong. If all conclusions regarding temperature, densities, and pressures throughout this solar system are herein shown to be founded on wrong premises, they must therefore be wrong. All dimensions are relatively right, but are wrong when measured by units of this planet's standard. Our record of dimensions is in relative ratios. Consider Mercury, a little, heavy, hard planet, supposedly less dense than this Earth, but in reality very much more so. Crushed in the tremendous pressure of close proximity to the great pressure center of this system, and just recently taken from the furnace to cool, it slowly wends its spiral way to where Jupiter now is, but will not then be. Jupiter is not hard, it could not be. Even with its vast bulk, it is not hot as we know heat. Iron would melt there at about 2 degrees. It is in a different pressure zone, where releasing pressures expand mass of little volume to mass of big volume. And Saturn, a vast but pithy planet, would either completely ionize or shrink to insignificance if moved to Mercury's orbit, just as Mercury would explode if suddenly moved to Saturn's. Then comes Uranus, softer still, wobbling on its changing pole. Then Neptune, so tenuous that a cloud of ours would be a rock in comparison. Beyond Neptune, our last known planet, which is but approximately 3/11ths of the distance to the limit of our solar system, there are more planets which are so vast and so tenuous that Jupiter is a pea beside one, and Neptune a solid in comparison. Within our solar system are pressures, temperatures, and densities undreamed of by man, because miscalculated by him from unit pressures of this planet with which he is familiar.